Susie Dent, Queen of Countdown, Queen of Dictionary Corner. How many episodes now?
Someone asked me that the other day. I think maybe 8,000 or 9,000. That's just regular countdown as well.
We chanced our arm, which is a phrase that's in the book. We chanced our arm earlier on by putting out there that you might now currently be the person who's been on telly longest, who is still on telly.
Oh, yes, because it's always the test card girl, isn't it? Do you remember
no,
that?
I mean, there's been other people as well before that and since then.
Of course. I genuinely don't know.
Because the host has changed, but Dictionary Corner's always stayed the same.
It's just, I always used to say it was me and the clock, but then the clock was changed. So I probably am the last relic in that studio.
That's good. I didn't know that. The clock's changed.
The clock has changed.
Where's the old clock?
I think it's actually somewhere in Media City. I think you used to be able to go and see it. So there's a Dalek you can go and have your photo taken out. And I think the countdown clock is somewhere.
I remember we had the countdown clock on TFI once. We brought it in.
Yes,
do you remember?
I do remember that.
We brought it in. We just had the countdown clock for it to intro every guest. It was the actual countdown clock. So countdown still going strong. Another new host now.
Yes, so we have Colin, who is like an excited puppy. I mean, he just...
Always has been, always will be.
He's always loved it. And I've known Colin for ages, since his Radio 1 days. And the very first thing he said to me, well, probably the second sentence was, I want to present Countdown. It's the job he's always wanted. And he said he would give up anything to do that. So, you can tell his enthusiasm.
So he's very wordy. How wordsmithy is he?
He's very curious, which is great. Right. So not a programme goes by when he hasn't said to me, that would be a really good one to do. That origin of words would be a good one to look into. And he's hugely competitive. I've been to an escape room with Colin. I've never met anyone so obsessively competitive.
I love the fact you've been on TV so much, Susie, you had to round it up to the nearest 1,000.
Yeah.
8,000 or 9,000.
I
knew you wouldn't, which is why one of the many reasons I love you, because you don't, it's not that you don't care about that, but you're just not a counter, are you? You don't need that in your locker.
No.
8,000 or 9,000, give or take. I bet it's probably 10 or something like that.
Well, we've done quite a few, but maybe 200 of the comedy countdowns as well. So
how has that changed your life? 8 out of 10s.
Hugely, because you know me, Chris, I've always liked to fly below the radar, and because of Cats Down, as we call it,
that's good, isn't it?
It's kind of lifted me above, but in a really nice way, because if I do get recognised, it's always people asking me about lovely Sean Locke, or asking me about Jimmy's laugh, so I think obviously because of the time it goes out, it's given a new boost to Countdown as well, which is brilliant. So we've seen people go back to Countdown.
And have you had any different bookings, like festivals and things, because of 8 out of 10 Cats? Different vibe.
It is a very different vibe, but you have to remember, I'm not funny. I'm only ever funny by mistake.
But you're really interesting and lovely.
Thank you. I did try really hard to be funny at the beginning, and it just never worked. So now I think I'm just Jimmy's stooge, probably, and that's fine.
No, well, I don't know.
You
know better than I do because you're there. This book is brilliant, Susie. It does not disappoint. The books are sort of collections of different flavours, lanes, worlds, whatever you like. Greetings, animals, vegetables, minerals, all at sea, colourful, the body. How did you choose those?
Do you know, that was also quite difficult with themes, because you end up with a whole load of miscellaneous ones. But because of the flavour of Brewer, they were quite eclectic. And so there may be a sort of few little surprises in there when people think, well, what's that doing in there? But in a way, that's what I wanted, I just wanted that element of
Some
surprise.
of the chapter titles are obviously reference point subjects within themselves, including the book. So what is it? I think chapter 9 is Rock Bottom, which is a chapter. And also... it's a mystery that you have an answer to.
Well, rock bottom. So, are you referring to all the bottom things that happen? Yes, in English.
All the bottom.
Kids love this. Honestly, squelchy, farty things are everywhere in English, and kids always love this. So, the word feisty, for example, was first applied to a little windy lapdog. That nobody particularly liked and was a bit yappy. And to fizzle meant to break wind quietly. Trust you to land on this one.
And at length. I think the quieter the fizzle, potentially the longer the fizzle.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We love Steel One's Thunder. I mean, to be honest, we can stick a pin. It's stick a pin in time, isn't it? It's your all-time favourite.
I honestly think it is because it's so rare for a lexicographer to find the exact moment that a word or phrase was born, and this is an exception. So it was February the 5th, 1709.
Come on, she's not even reading this.
No, it was this playwright critic called John Dennis. He had written a really boring play. But he had one thing in his production that was amazing, which is he perfected this machine that made the sound of thunder. But still, his play closed. He went along to the next performance, which was of the Scottish play, and was enjoying it by all accounts, and then heard booming out from the stage the sound of his own thunder-making machine. And he stood up and he shouted, "Damn them, they will not let my play run, but they steal my thunder."
Which is
incredible.
It's incredible. It's a brilliant story, and it's a great moment. But how come then certain phrases like that then get adopted and take? Because that could have just fizzed and died away, in that moment, couldn't it?
Yeah.
So how come they get picked up? How come they get traction?
So there were two people who were there that night. So they wrote about it. So it kind of fired up, I suppose, the imagination there because it was such a kind of controversial moment, I suppose. And then it's a really good question. I'm not sure we ever really know what the impulse is to preserve some phrases and not others. I think so many of them are rooted in beautiful beliefs, again, quite sort of semi-literal. So I think I've told you before about licking something into shape.
Yeah, I love that.
Which is
just give us that again.
Okay, so that's because, and even Shakespeare believed this too, that bear cubs are born as furry blobs and they need to be licked into bear shape by their mums.
Isn't that great?
It's just... It's just so gorgeous.
And bears have quite rough tongues, so it could. I mean, they could be. There's a certain chewing quality as opposed to a chewing quality, as well as a chewing quality. Rachel,
I like the story that it's suspected that Google, the US company, was simply misspelled by the founders.
Yes. That's right. And honestly, I talk a lot about
what
a big part of Google this because it's Google, isn't it? So it's Googol, and I think it was someone's nephew who thought this would be a good name, and then it was misspelled. But there are so many stories where it's something. Just one person in history changed something by accident. So I always love the fact that we should be sneezing rather than sneezing. There was an F before sneeze, but someone misread, those long
Yeah, because they look like S's and F's.
Exactly. Someone misread it. But sneezing is so much more evocative of a sneeze, I think, than sneezing.
The whole OO thing, we've talked about it before, whether it's Google, Whoop, Zoopla, it does seem if you want to have something memorable online that's sticky from people engaging with it, an OO definitely helps.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? It's the sound, and it sounds quite friendly. I think. But then others have about this trend, so not so much online, but Starbucks chose from Moby Dick. I mean, that's quite a literary reference because a Starbuck is a character in Moby Dick, which I think is lovely too. So, but they are quite random. Like the Oscars, I think, are so named because someone had a statuette when they were just being established on their desk. And someone said, "Oh, that looks like my nephew Oscar." And I think she was one of the secretaries in the business, and so they were called Oscars.
That's why they call the Oscars. It's so mad. And what's interesting but meditative about each definition, especially the phrases, is it just gets you thinking about the time and the environment and the people in the room, whether it's in the theatre, whether it's the secretary who works around the Academy Awards Committee. You think, this speaks so much to who we are and how we got to where we were in the moment and where we're going from there. A bit like food. That's why we like food shows, isn't it? Because they go around the world and they speak to the culture, they speak to socio-economic conditions, they speak to the governments, they speak to war and peace, pre and post. And it's all comes to, and you think, oh my goodness me, these are such concise tidbits, sort of chinks in massive chapters of our evolution and our development. Are we getting more wordy or less wordy? Because it seems we're going. I mean, I've started using emojis all the time now. I just love them, and I thought when they first came out, I thought, why would we want to go backwards, not forwards?
Exactly the same. I was exactly the same as you, and now I think they're actually really important. I remember when Oxford Dictionaries published the crying with laughter emoji as their word of the year, and it got so much flack. But in their defence, they said this is a linguistic element that, despite most in this year, it was good, maybe a decade ago now. And, you know, these are the successors to Egyptian hieroglyphs. They are still pictorial representations of language. And I use them all the time now because we're speaking with our fingers, aren't we? We're tapping away on our screens. And we've all fallen foul of sending a message which we interpret one way in our heads and the other person reads it in a very different way. So a winky face can go a very long way.
All right, what's the most useful wordy period of history? Where's the most geographically prolific wordy area in the UK? And who's the most impressively wordy person you've ever had on the show?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the most interesting period. Well, I love Victorian slang because it's such a sort of hodgepodge of things. So on the one hand, the Victorians were famously quite squeamish.
Hang on, where's hodgepodge come from?
Oh, hodgepodge. It's actually was an old stew. So a lot of words for kind of jumbles like gallimaufry or balderdash and all that kind of stuff. They were sort of really unappetising foodie concoctions.
No, I'm sorry.
So I think it was a stew. So on the one hand, they were really squeamish and they wouldn't say words like trousers because trousers was just, they housed the unthinkable and people couldn't mention that word. So they came up with inexpressibles and unmentionables and sit-upons and round me houses and all sorts of weird sidesteps. But then they had real fun as well. So they called sausages bags of mystery because you didn't know what was in them. Or eggs were cackle farts. And just stuff like that I really like. Most interesting geographical area, well, it's really hard to say, but I would just say that English isn't in our hands anymore, or mouths, in that we are now outnumbered by non-native speakers. So collectively, non-native speakers in a way are going to determine the direction of English, which I think is really exciting. So I would say everywhere but us, in a way, watch this space in terms of people who have English as their second and third languages. That's really exciting. And the most interesting in terms of language skills, that is really,
Who's
really
just
hard.
wafted in and it's just so erudite, it's frightening.
I would say, in terms, she wouldn't call herself erudite, but in terms of linguistic inventiveness, it's got to be Jo Brand, because she comes up with her own 9-letter words within 30 seconds and gives them a definition. I mean, that's pretty.
And she's a Killer Countdown contestant as well.
Yes.
She loves it, doesn't she?
She does.
Interesting stories about curious words, from stealing thunder to red herring. Susie Dent, Vassos.
How do new words? I mean, it's generally the young, the teenagers, and the early kind of 20s who invent them. But how do they? So, like, cool never meant cool, and now it means cool more than it means cold. Yes. So, my son said to me the other day, "You're just going to have to firm it, Dad." When did firm it started meaning firm it?
What does it mean?
Well, just look, I've forgotten my coat, and it's going to be cold outside. I'll just firm it.
Oh, okay, I'll just go for it.
Just
grow some. Just grow some.
Yeah.
Tough it out. Okay.
Yeah, tough it out.
Oh, interesting. I've not heard that one. Slang is the fastest moving area of language, along with emojis, actually. Because it's designed as a code. So the moment parents or authorities or teachers or whatever scale the wall, it has to move on really, really quickly. So whether or not it sticks is down to exposure and people picking it up and instantly getting it. Because if you have to gloss it or define it all the time, it kind of, it's got to be instantly recognisable. And, although I didn't get firm it, I do now understand what you're talking about. So how things work, which ones are fly-by-nights and which aren't, is really hard to fathom sometimes.
Fly-by-night, where's that come from?
Fly-by-nights were actually...
You do this on purpose?
No, they were old carriages that would they would just, basically you'd take one at night and you would, you'd get there faster. I don't quite know what made them. Maybe they were very light.
I love people who use the phrase, the whole kit and caboodle, don't you?
Oh, yes.
I never use it, but I don't want to. Because I just want to be admiring of other people that do. I don't think I've ever met somebody I don't like who uses the word kit and caboodle.
Kit and caboodle, that's really true. And the nice thing about that is wordplay, because the boodle bit means possessions. It's from Dutch, and then we just added the k on it to meet the kit. So kit caboodle.
I know we always have the Shakespeare conversation, but I mean, he was awesome, wasn't he?
He was awesome. I think
Officially awesome, Shakespeare.
Of course he was. And we hold him up as English done well, don't we?
However-
But people hated him at the time. Well,
Yeah.
not hated him, but they thought he was mucking around with language and it shouldn't be laughable, it should be laugh-atable. What's he talking about? And also the Oxford English Dictionary, he's one of the foundations of the dictionary because he was one of the classical authors, obviously, that was referred to and studied hugely. But what it means is that his contemporaries who weren't so well known, or the people that came before him who may have invented the words that he then used, aren't given the credit because he was not one of the canons that was studied for the OED. So there's a lot of what we call anti-dating going on now, where people discover a use of a word earlier than Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And that's like a big prize, But it doesn't mean he wasn't amazing, and it doesn't mean he
course he
didn't
was.
popularise them,
Yeah.
but he probably wasn't the grand creator of as many as we think.
Okay, one female author that, if people could buy one book today, one female author.
One female author that, in terms of linguistic influence,
Yeah, just like elegance, beauty,
elegance and beauty.
word-wise.
Yeah, I would say Sylvia Plath,
Yeah.
and I would also say George Eliot, probably.
And what about Dickens versus Shakespeare versus Orwell versus Wilde? Pick a winner there. Go on.
Do I have
Off the top of my head. That's quite impressive, wasn't it?
Well done, Chris.
Go on.
Dickens, Shakespeare, Orwell, Wilde, and I have to, in terms of linguistic
Just pick,
contribution.
we can only afford one book for the rest of our lives. Whose book are we going to buy?
Well, I work with Giles Brandreth, who loves Oscar Wilde, so I'll go with Oscar Wilde.
Which one? Picture of Dorian Gray?
Oh, I love that.
So do I.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is
It's just
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
just
I read
such
a
a
paragraph of
powerful
that book and I
message.
just go, I have to put it down. Just because of the wonder of the paragraph, the magnificence of the paragraph.
I did that yesterday also with Donna Tartt and Goldfinch. Just read a paragraph for writing and it's just, I'm never going to be able to
Just
write
get
like
blown
this.
away.
Yeah.
Just
it's
read it again
so
and
good.
again and again. It's like listening to your favourite Beatles song again and again.
Yeah.
Susie, great book. It's not coming out of our water closet. Is that all right?
It's not coming out of our water closet.
Yeah.
What? Okay, I've
The
missed that
downstairs
reference.
loo. I'm just going to leave it there.
I see.
I'm going to get a little
Thank you.
red velvet cushion and a stool, which we don't have room for, but I'm just going to put it there forever. This book is amazing.
Thank you. I'm going to finish with them Bumpf because
Bumpf.
this is a book of Bumpf, and Bumpf is from Bumfodder, meaning loo roll. It was military slang.
Bumfodder.
So don't use it as Bumfodder, but I'm happy if it.
By the way,
belongs in your
bump is
loo.
just a great word to say, isn't
I
it?
love Bumpf.
Bum is great, but then the f at the end. Bum, and enjoy. Have the f for free.
Yeah.
And it's not an F, it's a PH.
No. But yeah. Well, that starts as Bumfodder. So
Yeah, but it's PH
strictly
now, isn't
speaking, I think maybe
I'd say
both.
bum.
Maybe both.
From stealing thunder to red herrings. Just give us red herrings quickly.
Red herrings, lots of different theories, but it's usually about hounds and either prisoners trying to escape convicts, dragging a red herring across to lead the hounds astray, or as a training thing for hounds. So that's the idea, a kind of decoy type
Gift
thing.
that keeps on giving. Susie Dent, thank you so much.